twist and turn. Good afternoon and welcome back from your breakout sessions. If you're just coming in, come up to the front. And for the next 20 minutes, this qualifies as the front. So I'm here with Kevin Systrom, and my first question for you, Kevin. In 2010, when you launched Instagram, did you ever believe there'd be a day when the TSA got on and started publishing photographs of cute bomb-sniffing dogs?
We were talking backstage about the diversity of accounts that have been created over the last 4 years. Initially, it was just for me and my friends. The reason why we created Instagram was to be able to share and communicate visually. It's something I care deeply about. I interned at a company called Odeo that became Twitter, and I never caught on with communicating via text. I'm not a big reader, but I am a big photographer. And as we started, we thought it was just going to be about people, and a small side effect of giving people usernames is that you could get just about anyone on the platform. And today we were looking at the TSA account, which obviously isn't something I could have predicted. But even being able to connect with a governmental agency through Instagram is something that's really special, and I think a small use case of the overall use case, which is just connecting to any and all interests that you might have visually.
Right, and the TSA, I mean, super interesting. It's like all like weird weapons that have been uncovered. And what I'm curious about when I look at that is like, what do you think that a TSA would be trying to do with a platform like that?
You know, I won't put myself in their shoes specifically because I haven't lived with their account long enough. But overall, I think what people are trying to do is communicate what they do most efficiently. Right. Whether you are, a reporter in North Korea trying to show what you're reporting on, whether you're a magazine trying to cover Hurricane Sandy, or you're a company like Banana Republic and you're trying to show your new fall line. I think it has applications that are very universal in general. And the fact that it is a visual medium, I think, allows you to communicate whatever your goals might be. And in the TSA's, case, it's probably about showing the stuff that they're keeping from getting onto planes and public transportation.
Sure, that makes sense. So Instagram right now, your last reported numbers, you have 200 million plus users. It's a very engaged audience. In the fall of 2010, when you guys launched, at the time of launch, there were just a number of photo sharing apps that launched. What do you think it is about Instagram that made it the absolute breakout success of the crew?
When we launched, it wasn't a sure bet. In fact, when I told people that I wanted to work on a photography app, everyone kind of looked at me like I was crazy. There's actually this infographic out there that shows the size of exits in video and the size of exits, financial exits in photos. And the data points it used at the time were basically YouTube was the one data point on the video side. And then on the photo side, you had like a bunch of small ones like Flickr and a handful of others. They thought we were crazy. But the reason why we went after it is because we felt like it could be universal. And the way we set ourselves apart from the crowd was focusing on problems. So many entrepreneurs today are technology in search of a problem, not the other way around. And we were looking at problems, and then we decided how to solve them. So it was beauty. All the photos at that time taken on mobile phones were pretty crappy, right? None of us like taking bad photos. So how could we improve those with filters? The other was speed. We started uploading photos as soon as you took the photo, and we throw it away if you don't decide to upload it and post it. But it meant that the second you were done editing your caption, it was posted to the network. And the last one was really distribution. Right. At that time, you were using one app to post to one network, and this was the first time ever you could take a photo and post it to many networks all at once. By solving those three problems and being problem-centric, I think we really were able to tip the scale.
So you arrived at a point where we had all recently gotten iPhones within the past 5 years and suddenly could take pictures from our pockets, and you allowed us to make good pictures. And it had struck me, and we talked a lot about it, and you can read about it in Fortune, where Kevin is the cover boy. A good likeness, right? Good likeness.
Today.
Yeah, clap. I heard a clap. Today, he said.
Yeah. For this conference only on the cover.
For this conference.
Good.
Hey.
No, it's good. I love it.
So we talked a lot about the nature of the evolution of the image, as we all can do so many things with images now. I mean, we can essentially make them talk for us.
Right.
Where do you think this is going?
Well, people like to say that what happened was they added a camera to a cell phone. And I actually think it's the other way around. What happened was we added networking to cameras. And if you start thinking about it that way, and if you start thinking about the camera not as just a camera, but a visual microphone, you're basically able to take whatever you're seeing in the world right in real time and broadcast it anywhere immediately. And that was the revolution we saw with basically the iPhone. The iPhone was like the first phone that really took consumer photography and got it to a level where you were just willing to post it. And then an Instagram filter kind of pushed it over the edge. It was that activation energy. I think what we're seeing today is basically an entire market being created around that visual microphone. And something we talked a lot about in the article was just the emergence of privatization, the idea that I don't have to broadcast everything to everyone. And I'm not sure that that itself is a market versus that's a part of a larger market of visual communication. And what we're seeing is multiple companies attacking different parts of the spectrum, everything from broadcast to very, very private one-on-one. And I think you'll start seeing more and more companies over the next 5 years take advantage of the fact that now we have this microphone that is visual in our pocket.
So you, in over the last year and a half or so in Instagram, you've launched a handful of new products. One of them is actually a private messaging product. Now, when it was launched, the press largely poo-pooed you, said nobody liked it. But I was surprised in my reporting to discover actually you're seeing some traction on it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Every product at the beginning, we were talking about this as well, looks like either a toy or a fad, and it isn't clear until either the product gains a network effect or it falls to the wayside whether or not it's going to be successful. And for a network effect-based product, it also takes a very long time. So let's remind ourselves, Instagram didn't launch yesterday. Biz Stone from Twitter likes to say every overnight success takes 3 years. And it's true. Every company that's going to be popular in the next year has been around for 3 years. They've been working on ideas, they've been experimenting, and they have something that's just under your radar that's growing very, very quickly. And I think Instagram Direct, when we started off, the whole idea was, hey, our network's very large now. We have 200 million plus people using Instagram. It turns out your friends are on there, your parents are on there, maybe your coworkers are on there. Maybe you want to share some photos just with a select group of people, and I know I do. So for instance, I use Instagram Direct with my parents. It's a way of sharing my life, maybe in a more private way. So I'm like, hey, I'm about to go on stage, and it's a way to share it with a select group of small people. That's a use case that isn't necessarily solved for the public at large.
Sure.
And you have multiple companies tackling it.
Multiple companies tackling that. So you launched this product. What do you know about how users are using it? I mean, how many people are using it?
Well, I believe the stat we shared was 48 million people,
Yeah.
45 million, something like that. It changes every day because more people use it.
And that's a rolling month, right? So that means within
Yes.
the last 30 days, that's how many
Exactly.
people have used it to send or receive. So you could have
Correct.
just received a message that counts.
Well, it received and opened
Right.
and interacted with. So we don't just count the fact that you send it to people and they don't open it. We wouldn't count that as an interaction.
Got it.
So that's growing very quickly. In fact, it's growing nearly 2 times the rate of the organic user base, which means not only are new users adopting it, but it's actually growing in utility within the actual user base. We also see interesting things where it's being used overseas in different ways. So certain countries, and I won't name specific countries, certain countries are actually taking off much more quickly than other countries. And I think it speaks...
You can name those countries.
I could name these countries, but we actually want to see it play out because on Instagram initially what happened was we actually took off very quickly in Japan, and we thought Japan was going to be a very, very big market for us.
Right.
Now it's not even in the top 10. So what we want to do is wait and see how the network effect takes hold, but what you're seeing is that people are using it in specific countries. It's growing within their social networks, and by social network I don't mean everyone they've ever connected with. I mean the people in their address books, the people they care deeply about. They're using it as chat to connect on the side of something they use every day, which is Instagram.
So you also launched a video product. How is that doing?
It's really, I think it's doing very well. So here's the thing. If you evaluate Instagram video as, is it going to be the next YouTube? I think you'll be sorely disappointed. Here's why. It turns out that consumers don't take video at all, right? Look at your camera roll. If you do this after this talk, look at your camera roll and count how many photos you take compared to how many videos you take.
Right.
It's somewhere in the range of 1 to 10, 1 to 20 for a normal person. But what we were able to do was create a platform where you could capture those moments that you do want to post in video. And we're seeing that work very well. It's specifically great inside of brands and public figures. So if you follow, like I was looking through the Burberry account the other day. They do all sorts of interesting stuff around their fashion shows. So they're actually able to take little clips of their fashion shows and share it with their fans immediately. That's the kind of behavior that has been unlocked. I don't think what Instagram video will become is the mass market way of just browsing video clips online, like soccer games, et cetera, clips of movies.
Right.
But it will be consumer video in mobile, and that I'm very happy with.
So both of those product launches have happened within your new home, which is Facebook.
Yeah.
You've been with Facebook now since, when was the acquisition?
Depends how you count it. Announced, closed, they were all
Let's go
years
with
off.
closed.
So
What was
we've
your
been
first
there
day
for
of work?
2 years. It was September of basically 2 years ago.
So what has being at Facebook allowed you to do?
Hypergrowth, both in hiring and scaling. So hiring is great because what you're able to do is tap into an existing employee base of specialists, whether it's in infrastructure, image science, you name it. We're able to hire those people. They rotate off other projects. Facebook actually has a culture of people being able to rotate between teams.
Right.
And immediately there's this group of people that are able to work on Instagram. So we were able to scale the team very quickly. We're now at about 150 people. The other part is just infrastructure. Okay, Instagram is a hypergrowth company. We were talking about this before. We are now mostly inside of Facebook's infrastructure that allows us to run more efficiently. We don't pay as much to this, like content distribution networks, et cetera. We're able to make sure it's more reliable and more secure. Right. And it just means that we're able to scale much, much more quickly without the blips that you've seen a lot of companies in hypergrowth go through.
And in the last 6 months, you've actually started very actively moving into advertising.
Yes.
And that has not happened soon enough for the advertisers that I talk to, who are all trying to figure out how to use the platform independently. So what have you learned in the last 6 months about advertising on Instagram?
Well, let me make it clear that advertising has always been on our roadmap. The question is when. And not only when, so we announced when, the question is how and how quickly. One thing we really want to make sure we do is grow the right way. There's could versus should, right? We could just slap banner ads in. We could just take all the inventory on Facebook and put it inside of Instagram. But if we do that too quickly, which we can do, I think bad things end up happening in the community. What we should do is take it slowly, decide which advertisers will set the bar high, which I think you've seen with companies like Hollister, Ben & Jerry's, Lexus.
Right.
Those companies, I think, get Instagram because they have an organic presence. And what that does is it creates a really wonderful loop. It's a feedback loop where other advertisers look to advertisers on Instagram and say, what are you doing and what should we be doing? And I think that's created a virtuous cycle.
And you are still looking at basically every advertisement that goes up, right?
That's correct. One of the things that I implemented very early on was the idea that I would see every ad before it went on for 2 reasons. One is to make sure the ads we're putting on Instagram meet our content quality level and that we set the bar high initially. I don't expect to check every ad into the future. But the second is just I want to know what advertisers want out of Instagram. As the CEO, you end up flying at a very high level and you see lots of things at inch-deep levels and you really need to make sure that you see what's happening on the ground. So making sure that I'm in the loop of every ad that goes on to Instagram means that I know what advertisers want. And very few times have I pushed back. And in fact, often when I push back, they thank me because it's either a typo or something's wrong with the ad. And I think it's going very well because of this. It also keeps me in the loop as a leader.
Now, there's also a very rich ecosystem of people who are interested in helping advertisers on Instagram. For example, there's a company we'll hear from later today that is in the analytics business around Instagram. And then there's a company in New York, there are a handful of companies that employ individual photographers and attach them to brands. Do you do anything actively to support this ecosystem?
We do things like we have an API, and our API allows for companies to dig in and understand the analytics behind accounts, understand how many followers they have, how many followers they've gained, things like how many likes are on photos and the velocity of likes on photos, when the optimal time to post is. So we have an API that allows for companies to exist like that. I'm very happy for companies to exist like that because obviously we're a small team. Even at 150, I consider that very small. You're not able to do everything. So it's important for other people to find their niche and support advertisers in whatever way makes sense.
So, the summer of 2014 is Instagram's moment. I know that because all the teenagers I know are begging their parents to get on it. I've covered social media for long enough to understand that it seems sometimes like these services are a bit like television shows. You get your Family Ties, which is great for 12 years. You get your Punky Brewster, which was awesome for like 2 years. Which is Instagram?
Punky Brewster or Family Ties?
Sure.
I'm not entirely sure. That's an interesting question. I think, I don't know, does anyone have an answer out there? But no, actually, I totally get the question. I'm just poking fun. So here's the thing. I think every network has its relevant time in history. I mean, look at every company, right? Like, even companies that were super relevant 100 years ago are still around today. It just turns out that either our focus has changed or the industry has changed, whether it's the railroads or whether it's the web browser or whether it's a search engine. Like, things change in our needs as consumers that require new companies to exist. That doesn't mean that those companies are any less important today, because every company today is building off their history. Instagram is still in its infancy. I mean, we're growing very quickly overseas. We get about 4 to 5 times as many signups overseas as we do domestically every single day. And what that means is that we're gradually kind of expanding our reach around the world to allow people to connect. And I'm not sure I have a prediction of when things shift, but you do see companies like Facebook make shifts very well. For instance, Facebook could have been stuck in an era of the browser, but Mark made a very intelligent decision to basically pivot the entire company to mobile. There was a time where it was hard to find an iOS developer at Facebook, and you could only find PHP developers. Now it's the opposite. And the way those companies make transitions is often the more interesting question than when.
I want to bring the audience in here. Does anybody have a question?
This room filled up.
For zero. Oh, hey, we got one way back there. It's just hard to see back there. Please give us your name.
Sure, Jason Del Rey. I'm a journalist with Recode. Hey, Kevin. One question. I know advertising, you're just starting to experiment with that and get going. Are commerce initiatives anywhere on your roadmap, either affiliate type models or click to buy with transactions happening within the Instagram world? Thanks.
Yeah, we've certainly, just to bring the audience into this, in terms of commerce, the idea is that you're scrolling through your feed and you might see, I don't know, a Burberry scarf, and you're able to click to buy. We've certainly thought about it, but it's just a tough market to start in. It doesn't mean you don't eventually get there, but where we like to be right now is onboarding brands. I mean, there are literally still retail brands that are not on Instagram, and even if you are on Instagram, it's not clear you're using it in the most efficient way. So in terms of a value chain, where we start is making sure that people use the platform most efficiently. And whether or not the path we're on leads us to a product like you're talking about, I think the future will tell, but it's certainly on our mind because we see a lot of retail brands really loving Instagram.
Up to the front here and wait for the microphone, and then we'll go back there afterwards.
Hi, I'm Spencer Raskoff from Zillow. Kevin, you talked about some of the benefits of being part of Facebook. Are there any disadvantages that you can mention?
Yeah, I mean, instantly our company effectively went public, right? So everything we do is no longer simply just Instagram, the little startup. Now we're part of a public company and subject to all sorts of rules that public companies are subject to as well, especially as we start making money. That doesn't mean that it's been a disadvantage. It's just like it's a challenge, right? Also, you're very, very big and you're global, so it means when the regulators are looking at specific things on the Facebook platform, they also look on Instagram as well, and also any other acquisition that happens. That's not necessarily a bad thing because it makes us much more diligent early on rather than getting big and then making mistakes. So we get to learn a lot from Facebook as they've grown because they're now 1 billion plus people. So it's certainly a challenge because not many startups operate in that way. But we've certainly grown even regardless of that. So I think it's going very well.
Okay, right back here.
I'm Serena Saito from Bloomberg News. I'm curious, do you pay any of your users who get massive following? And if so, how many are those you pay?
This is a really important question and it's timely. Something I felt very strongly about the entirety of Instagram from day one is that we never pay users to use Instagram. We've had plenty of times, and I won't name names. If you read articles, you can actually look these things up. But we've had plenty of times celebrities have come to us, businesses have come to us wanting money, and it makes sense, whether it's ownership in the company or some kind of cash compensation. But my stance has always been, listen, I hope that we provide enough value to you in building this network and the reach to your fans that you'll want to use this regardless. I think a lot of companies that have taken the route of paying people very early on, I've yet to see that really work. And that's why I wanted to make sure to focus on growing organically. And it wasn't always the easy answer. Sometimes it really did feel like we would actually not grow, but I'm proud to say that we stuck by our guns and continue to today.
Do we have one last question in the audience? We've got one way in the
right
back.
here.
I want to sort of equal opportunity audience members here.
Hi, this is Greg Sang from Tagged. So at 200 million active users, Instagram is about as big as Twitter, and Twitter is worth tens of billions of dollars. Did Instagram sell too early?
I get this question a lot. If your goal is to maximize value and you know the future, then you can make your own conclusion. But I don't know, I love what I do every day. I love my co-founders. I love the team I work with. I love the problems we work on. I love the impact we have around the world. I never think about that question. And I'm just happy to do what I do every day. And I think in a lot of ways, why we're as big as we are is because we're inside of Facebook and we were able to grow very quickly. We doubled our user base more quickly than any other social network before us. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're inside of Facebook and we have all the benefits of technology, safety, privacy, and growing our team as well. But yeah, I get that question a lot, but I'll be on the record that I'm very happy with what we've done and what we continue to do.
And with that, we're very happy to have you here in Aspen. Thank you for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks. Sure.